Welcome to Amish Roots, plain talk in a modern world. I am so glad you have joined me. The excitement of going on vacation is something I look forward to for weeks before we actually depart. And our 4 day trip to Manitoulin Island was no different. This was a couple of years ago, and I had never been to the island, and I had never ridden the ferry called the Chi-Chi-Mon, which I had heard many people talking about. So this was going to be double the fun. We left early on the Friday morning as we had a lengthy drive and we needed to catch the ferry. Everything went smoothly traffic wise, and the water was calm for the boat ride. Our vacation was off to a great start. My husband had booked a hotel for our stay, and he had told me that it was just off the island, as prices were a little more reasonable than staying on the island itself. He drove up to the motel. I realized right away why it was less expensive. The description I wrote in my journal was: it is a bit sketchy, but serviceable. It was clean, and the manager was very friendly and helpful. Besides, we were only going to be there for sleeping anyway. Our weekend progressed with us hitting some tourist destinations, visiting some people we knew on the island, and we had some downtime relaxing by the water, always returning to our motel each day exhausted and going to sleep. For our last day, we decided to take a picnic lunch with us and went to a walking trail that was apparently famous on Manitoulin Island. It was a grueling climb. Some parts of it we literally had to crawl up to reach the next section. However, the view from the top was spectacular. We were hiking for about 2 hours, and by the time I was safely on level ground again, the call of nature was screaming at me. So, when we arrived back at the parking area, I was going to make use of the washroom facilities, which, by the way, was a porta potty set up at the edge of the trail. For such a well advertised trail, you would think they would have a more elegant place for their guests to unload after hiking for hours. When I opened the door, I had second thoughts about how badly I needed to go, and I even considered that wetting myself was preferable to entering the cubicle. But at last, we were only starting our day and we were a long way from fresh attire. So, holding my breath and bending only slightly, careful not to touch any surfaces, I got relief. When I look back, I wonder if this was some kind of a sign about how our day was going to be. We found a spot on the water to have a picnic, did some sightseeing, visited two more families, and then headed off the island in search of supper. On our drive, we had spotted a more upscale restaurant, so we decided to treat ourselves to a nice dinner. Then, on the drive back to the motel, we both said how tired we were and that we were looking forward to dropping into bed for our last night before heading out early the next morning to catch the ferry and then traveling home. Little did we know when we made those comments that our adventure was just beginning. We arrived back at the motel about 7:30 and the building was surrounded with about 20 police cars. I know this because I later counted them. We pulled up to the door of our motel room and a very animated police officer started yelling at us to leave the premises. Sitting there in stunned silence for a minute, we had the officer run up to us and, not realizing that he was dealing with two adults with extreme sluggish and tired minds, he again shouted for us to leave. My husband very reasonably asked him, well, where are we supposed to go? At which point the motel manager poked his head out the room door next to us and explained to the officer that we were guests there. The officer wasn't very impressed with this information and encouraged us strongly once again to get on our way. As we pulled out of the driveway, we noticed an empty lot across the road. People had gathered to watch the proceedings. So we decided to join them and keep an eye on our room, where our belongings were residing without us. Not knowing what was going on, we figured out quickly that it was a serious situation. There was a hefty police presence and a couple of ambulances parked across the road where we were. They seemed to be focused on one particular room, and police in riot gear with guns drawn approached the room. They also used a police dog and a cruiser as a shield as they advanced forward. As we sat in our car, we saw this all playing out in front of us. My husband lamented at one point, "All I wanted to do was watch a bit of TV and go to bed so that we could get some shut eye before our travel day tomorrow." To which I replied, "Why would you want to watch anything on TV when we're part of the real thing, live?" This did lighten the mood for us a bit until I began to realize nature was calling again. It was a Sunday night, and every place in the little town was closed for the evening. What is a girl supposed to do? It was now 11:30, and there was no end in sight. I finally decided to ask an officer that was roaming nearby if there was any chance that we were going to be getting into our room again that night. He sent a police liaison person to talk with us. When they learned we needed our things because we were leaving in a few short hours and had reservations for the ferry, they relented. They decided to let us grab our things and then leave the area. We were escorted by two armed officers in riot gear and rifles, one OPP officer, and the liaison person. They guarded us as we threw our stuff together and tossed it in the car. As we packed, the OPP officer was kind enough to call ahead to a hotel and booked us a room. By this time, my bladder was protesting, and I quietly asked if they would allow me to use the bathroom before we left, and I was told I could. After everything that was going on around us, you can bet that I checked behind the shower curtain before using the facilities. We arrived at our new hotel about 1:30 a.m. and crashed. Now the rest of the trip was uneventful, and we were glad to arrive home without any further incidents. After we were home, we got a call from the motel manager asking if we were okay, and he apologized for our inconvenience. He then explained to us that someone had signed for the room and gave the key to a fugitive. It was somebody wanted for murder. We asked him if the situation was now under control, and he told us they had apprehended the fugitive at 5:30 a.m. without incident. Good thing we didn't stick around, or things might have become a bit messy for me. In hindsight, this incident brought to light what actually happens to bystanders when episodes like this take place. It is not just a clip you see on the evening news. When people decide to commit acts of this sort, it affects so many more people than just themselves, police, and paramedics. Innocent people get hurt. They need to relocate. And in our case, the added cost of an extra hotel room. They are given little information. Oftentimes, they are left without food and water. And worst of all, no access to bathrooms. So, as you vacation this summer, have fun, be safe, and stay dry. Mach's gut and we'll see you next time on Amish Roots.